Hey everybody, this is Perch, and got a little viewer mail, and this mail is a little bit different because this mail is asking for advice. And believe it or not, there's a lot of different videos here. I mean, constant videos. One thing I don't do very often is give advice, and the reason being, I've been screwed too many times because half the time when people ask you for advice, they don't actually want advice. They want to kind of, and it took me a long time to realize this. Dating, and then ultimately, although one reason why I love Mrs. Perch, she doesn't do this kind of stuff. She doesn't troll me with asking questions that she doesn't really want to know the answer to. Generally, my wife, and this is one reason why we get along, when she asks a question, she actually wants to know the answer. But it took me a long time to realize that that's not how a lot of people work. Sometimes they just want to talk. They want a sounding board. They want you to kind of be the shoulder to cry on if you go, oh yeah, yeah, that sounds terrible. Yeah, that's really awful. They don't want somebody who's really going to go in there and say, hey, hey, this is what's going on. They don't want to hear that answer. So, but this question is asking for some advice, and we'll do it because I think that it represents a question maybe others can benefit from. It says, hey, Perch, I work for a small comic publisher. Please don't mention the name. And then he goes on to mention the name, which I won't mention here because you asked. No problem. Uh, and I'm behind on payments. I was promised an advance for some work on a comic, and I haven't been paid that. And the comic has since gone to print and gone to market, and I haven't received any payment for the royalty for the comic. I'm not sure how far to pursue this. I'm starting to get the impression that I'm getting screwed here, but at the same time, I don't want to be a problem creator. I don't want to be somebody who is known as a complainer, and I do want to get future work. What's the line that I should take in terms of getting paid versus just trusting that we'll work out in the end? And then there's a bunch of other details here that are not appropriate for the air, everything else. So, and I've abstracted a few of those things just to keep everybody's identity kind of anonymous. So first off, I'll give the more benign answer, and then I'll give some more direct feedback to that mail. This happens, a decent amount. This isn't a abnormal occurrence in comics. It happens with small publishers. I want to say quite frequently, because quite frequently means like, many people think in their heads a majority. It's definitely not a majority, but it also definitely happens frequently, meaning there's usually somebody involved in this situation on any given day. There's somebody who's living with this condition. Some of those make their way to Twitter, but if you notice, when they do make their way to Facebook or Twitter or social media, while you do get a lot of kind of likes and yes queens and you shouldn't be taken advantage of and that kind of stuff, moral support. What's Twitter isn't moral support. It's like Twitter support. You get a lot of Twitter support. Another word for that might be bullshit support. You get a lot of that. You get likes and retweets and like, this is really awful. But you'll notice that a lot of the people who make these complaints, if you check back in on them a year later, you'll discover they're getting no work anywhere. Why? Because nobody likes a complainer. And even if that person is 100% in the right and 100% getting taken advantage of and being screwed and all the rest, many publishers will look at any publicity is bad publicity and they won't hire you. If you complain, they won't. That's true. Now, that said, it's absolutely bullshit. Absolutely. And what is going on here? You're getting screwed. That's what's going on here. Somebody is screwing you. If somebody can't pay you, I've had people ask me from time to time, hey, what does it mean that the check bounced? Do you think they just got the banking information wrong? No, they're fucking you. That's what's going on. You are getting fucked. Sorry. I'll tone it back down here. No, there is no, we got the bank account wrong. Things that happen a lot in comics or anywhere, things that are common, is that payment is late because somebody is not communicating well. Somebody is promised a payment and then the payment does not come in promptly. And then you're like, hey, what's going on? You have to chase the person down. That does happen. because there is a circumstance of out of sight, out of mind. That's not necessarily sinister. That's just called people are kind of crappy at their jobs and tend to ignore things. That's what that is called. Now, that's not a good thing either, but there's a huge gap between, hey, I'm owed some money and it was supposed to be delivered on the 10th and it came in on like the 15th because nobody was paying attention. That kind of stuff does occur. That's generally seen, I would call it as incompetence or just not terribly good at your job, as opposed to malfeasance or actually trying to get somebody something out of somebody for nothing. However, in the situation of this letter writer, if you were not paid your advance like you're promised, and you delivered the work anyway, and then the work went to print, and then went to shops, and then money was collected for the work you did, and you are not getting paid for either your advance, which I have to assume is months earlier, or the new money, then they are screwing you. Just full stop. They are absolutely screwing you. And in many cases, a lot of small publishers will play this scam game of, if you make noise for me, I may cough up your money, but I'll let it be known you are difficult to work with, and then other small publishers won't work with you. Unfortunately, that is all too real that does happen. And people sometimes they'll come to me and say, well, do I need to eat things? Do I need to eat it? Basically, be taken advantage of because I don't want to have a bad reputation. And my answer generally is, why do you want to work in an industry where you're going to get screwed? Seriously. If you believe your time is valuable, then stop. Just full stop. I think there's, many people mistake being a jerk about things versus just standing up for your rights. You don't, for example, you don't have to go on Twitter and put a bunch of drama behind it, and a lot of people do. If you need to go public with the fact that you're not getting paid because nobody is answering you, and now has come the time to tag the person, then get somebody who's not you to write the tweet. Again, this is a stupid way to do it. The better way to do it is to get a lawyer and get them to chase it for you. By the way, a lot of lawyers, keep in mind, if you're owed some money, let's say you're owed $10,000, pulling that number out of the air. Many lawyers will come in and basically agree to, take half of it in order to get you your money. Now, you may say, why does that lawyer deserve half of that money? Probably not, but you're not getting right now your number is zero. So if you're just going for reclaiming the money, take that route. That is generally happens behind the scenes. If somebody tries to go public, like this small publisher goes on Twitter and says, I can't believe this creator has a lawyer chasing us for money, they don't look good. There's not a world where they can go, I'm the victim here because the lawyer is having to hunt me down because I didn't pay anything. However, if you decide to go to Twitter and say, this company screwed me, then it becomes a he said, she said thing, or he said, or whatever it happens to, whatever the genders are here. They said, they said. Huh? How about that? I'm progressive. Anyway, you could try that, but it's you unfortunately, you set it up when it's you chasing somebody on Twitter. Most reasonable people will look at this thing going, why didn't they just get a lawyer and hunt it down that way? That's something you can do. But the key here is this: don't be taken advantage of. Don't live in this fear of some small publisher is not going to give you work. Right now in 2021, there are enough other options for you. Yes, it may mean that several of the small publishers won't work with you. Do you care if they're all going to screw you? Go the crowdfunding route. Go the webtoon route. Go digital. There's many other options. If the key for you is your passion is comics, and you really want to make comics and you want to make some money off comics, then cool. There's lots of ways for you to do that where you're not getting screwed and sucking it up and taking a few because you're worried about somebody basically saying you're difficult to work with because you're demanding payment is a terrible, terrible trade. Don't do it. Just don't. It's a bad plan. I don't know the better way. The sad part about this is I can there's so many instances of people who are in comics who have had this happen to them. Like I said, not a majority, but frequently there are cases of people who get work and then don't pay, or they say things like you get paid in exposure. That's also stupid. And again, don't be a dick about it. You don't need to run around saying I don't. Like there was a couple threads from some creators and creators at Marvel. So at this point, like if you're working for Marvel, then maybe you have a beef about royalties and other things not getting paid and everything else. But don't be a writer at Marvel who's wanting to lecture other people about like some scam that somebody's trying to pull on you. I saw this thread. This person's like, "Oh, they were trying to get me to send original work their way and offer for exposure." It's like, look, you have exposure. You have exposure at Marvel. You sound like an asshole. Just stop with that stuff. I don't want to hear from you. Nobody wants to hear from you. Let people who actually are in this situation still struggling to make their way up. If you're a current writer at DC or Marvel, like I don't want to hear about how some Saudi Arabian prince is offering you money and you suspect it's a scam. Just shut the fuck up. Nobody cares. There are lots of people who are trying to break into the industry who do not have the luxury of constant pats on the back and constant affirmation on a daily basis of how awesome you are. So stop, like put the violin away. Nobody cares about you. Care about the small people who are actually trying to make their way up, who are getting screwed. Those people should get paid for what they do. If they entered into an agreement, so I go back and forth. I don't know. I give this advice, and people don't want to hear the advice. They want to argue about it. That's why I don't like to give it. My advice has been in the past, like, don't race to get an agent. I get that a lot of your weirdo friends are bragging about who has an agent and who doesn't. You know what's better than an agent is a check. I'm not saying you don't get an agent, but if you prioritize getting an agent over getting a lawyer, you're out of your goddamn mind. Get a lawyer. Have a lawyer look over your contracts. If you're entering into an agreement being something where somebody is going to pay you money in exchange for you doing something, have a lawyer look it over. That means you're going to have to pay money, but this is part of what being a grown-up is about. Just like paying your bills and not getting stoned all afternoon when you have a deadline. Get a lawyer, look over your contract, and have them help support you in getting a good deal. That's called being an adult. It's a good thing. If your priorities are basically airing all of your dirty laundry on Twitter so you can get hearts and likes, and your priority is finding an agent so people think you're impressive and cool, you are wasting your time and everyone else's time. Don't worry about an agent. Get a lawyer. Get a lawyer that's good, who's going to support you, look out for your interests, and help you out. Because there's a lot that goes on in comics, especially at early stages, where having a lawyer comes in really super handy. Anyway, I don't know. I get frustrated with this kind of stuff because I watch a lot of people enter in the exact same mistakes. Look, if you had an agreement with someone where they offered you work in exchange for money, you did the work, they proceeded not to pay you, you said, well, that's okay, I don't want to make a scene. They printed your work, they published it, it's out there, it's made them money, but you have received nothing. Then stop assuming that you're getting screwed. Period. The end. Don't make excuses for that. Somebody is screwing you. Don't take the opportunity. I don't know. Comics is at times a really screwed up business. In many cases, it's screwed up because people prioritize the exact wrong things, and it's why I get very frustrated with why there should be mentorship. There should be more care given to how a lot of this stuff works. People who are new and coming into comics, I think they should be protected more. They should, they should have more help. People on their side who are, basically teaching them unfortunately, what feels like a lot of common sense stuff, like, hey, don't give away stuff for free unless you know you're giving away stuff for free. You may decide, by the way, for exposure, you want to give something away for free, and that's fine. That could be a very viable business choice. But don't do it by accident because you're afraid of making any ripples. And at some point, yeah, you do need to get paid. Being paid is part of comics. Anyway, thanks for listening.